Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series, and you're about to hear one of my Genius Network interviews, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you find it very useful. If you want to find out more information about some of the interviews and resources that can help you in your business, you can go to www.joepolish.com. And we have a Joe Polish Recommends section with all kinds of resources and vendors and services and products that we recommend that can help you in your business. And also for more useful interviews and a whole list of other people that I've interviewed, you can go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks and enjoy the interview.
Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series. And today I am going to do an interview that I'm looking really forward to doing. I've got my good friends Tony and Mary Miller on the line. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Hi, Joe.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Where are you right now? I'm in my home in Tempe, Arizona. Where are you guys actually at?
We're in our home in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Wonderful. All right. Well, here we go. The wonders of technology. I've got a little bit of a sinus thing going on today, so if I sound kind of weird and nasally and sound bizarre, then just bear with me, everyone. My voice normally does not sound like this, but I'm going to go ahead and read their bio. Tony's first, and then I'll talk about Mary. And I know these guys. I've known them for many years now. However, I just want to make sure I leave all this stuff in here, and this is the only portion of the interview that I will be reading anything. So, who are these people? Well, Tony Miller has always been a hard worker with an eye for business opportunities. Back in 1970, Tony was a 19-year-old full-time student at the University of Cincinnati. He was also working full-time at United Dairy Farmers. He still remembers the economics lecture that changed his life. My professor gave a lecture on the bright future of the service industry. I remember he made a casual reference to janitorial services, and for some reason that made a real impression on me. Shortly after hearing that lecture, Tony began cleaning some of the local taverns that surrounded the University of Cincinnati campus. As the business began to grow, Tony was able to stop working at United Dairy Farmers, instead putting his effort into his own business and his schoolwork. He even hired friends and family as employees. Then, in 1972, his father unexpectedly passed away, and Tony assumed the responsibility for taking care of his stay-at-home mother, as well as his brothers and sisters who were as young as 3 years old. Tony quit school and put all of his focus on supporting his family through the cleaning business, Jan Koa. He continued to build the company, and it grew and was able to sustain his family for 20 years, at the same time providing gainful employment and good benefits for dozens of employees over the years. In 1993, Tony's wife, Mary, joined the business as a co-owner. Mary brought a wonderfully diverse skill set to the business and was a perfect complement to Tony. She put her business, marketing, and sales background to work for the business, and when that was combined with Tony's talents and knowledge, it sparked a synergy between them that initiated a quantum leap forward in the operations and management of Jan Koa. Tony and Mary worked together to create strategic plans for the company, focusing on a new direction. They worked together to develop their proprietary systems and quickly saw that those systems were best applied in larger areas. Jan Koa began to specialize in large, greater than 100,000 square foot commercial and industrial office buildings, and these environments remain their specialty today. Well, there's so much more that I could say about you guys because you've actually built a pretty phenomenal business in an industry that most people would not think some of the things that you've created can be done. And that's the purpose of today's interview, is really just talk about how you guys have become industry transformers. And just a little bit of background, I've known you guys from Strategic Coach. We've been in Strategic Coach for, over 7 years together personally in one of the programs, but many years longer than that. And so we've spent a lot of time together, and after all these years, I'm finally doing a Genius Network interview with you. So what else have you done, or should the listeners be aware of before I start asking you some questions?
Well, as you know, Joe, too, with Strategic Coach being such a big impact on our life and the way we've grown our business, I'm also one of their associate coaches.
Yep, and I wanted you to mention that. So you've spent a lot of time talking with, working with, and coaching entrepreneurs, which are the majority of people that will be listening to this interview, but also a lot of people, I'm sure, in your own company and other people that probably work with you will listen to this interview. So I want to really capture what you guys do, and you are really an amazing couple. And not, I will just say this for the listeners, not only are you very bright when it comes to ways that you've run your business, but you're just genuinely really good people and have really transformed a lot of amazing people. And I think this will be one of those interviews that I would recommend all of our listeners get out a notebook or something to write on, assuming you're not driving, and pay special attention because you're going to get some great nuggets that are very applicable not only to your business but all your personal life. So let me begin. What was the biggest shift when you started working together in 1993? Because prior to that, Tony had the business for over 20 years.
Well, Joe, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be real honest with you on this. I thought I was a really great entrepreneur. I'd been doing it for years and taking care of the family. And Mary comes along in the business, and the first thing she does is look at one of our customers. And it was a big customer. It was about a $25,000 a month customer, and we had all their bank branches, and we were really, I thought, doing a great job. And Mary got out a pencil and a piece of paper, and she wrote down all our costs, and she wrote down what we were charging. Now, this is probably going to be a surprise to you, Joe, but we were spending more money than what we were charging to the customer. And when I went to the customer to tell them about it, they said, you know, you might lose the job if you don't even sharpen your pencil farther.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, believe it or not, there's a ton of people, including many that are listening to this, that are actually paying to have businesses. It costs them more money to actually, you know, run the business than they actually bring in, which is a horrible position to be in. So, wait, so let me get this right, Tony. When Mary came along, you had been basically running the business that way for many years in a lot of areas?
Yes. From day one, I was working as hard as I could and felt that if I worked longer hours, that I could make up for what we were doing, not charging enough. The very first day that Mary sat down with her pencil and her piece of paper, she found out we were losing on that one job $10,000 a year. So she came in very tactfully and very lovingly, and she said, honey, one of the things that I found a way to get you a raise. And I'm thinking, hot dog, this is awesome. Her very first day, and I'm getting a raise. She said, you have to cancel that contract.
Oh, my God. Let me say this, then, because this is so true, and I usually, because I know you guys, I feel comfortable in stating this sort of thing. I mean, that creates horrendous amounts of stress in a person's life to operate a business that way. There's so much uncertainty. And secondly, you know, we're not talking about a tiny operation here. I mean, you guys have a pretty big, substantial business compared to many people. And what you have basically done, I mean, you're going to share, obviously, what you just shared is one of the big mistakes of business is not having real financial literacy in your own business. However, you have 20 years of experience that you're going to be able to download a lot of that wisdom here. So this interview could be really, really profound to a lot of people if they listen to it, because, you know, this is the first time, as far as I know, that you've actually sat down in this sort of format and really went through, you know, the summarizing your experiences that have taken you a lifetime of business to learn and develop, and you have created innovation that we'll discuss on this during this conversation that is so huge that every person can be profoundly impacted by it. But I guess the reason I said all that is, what was your life like before that, and what is it like now? Meaning, what's the size of your company? Anything that you could share that gives the listener a little snapshot of what your business looks like now compared to what it looked like then.
When I came to work with Tony, he had 2 women in the office, and whoever answered the phone was assigned the designated task at hand. There was no systems, no processes. So there's these 2 ladies in the office and Tony, and then about 65 part-time cleaners. Today, we have 300 full-time employees that clean the buildings and a management team between day and night of 15 people, and that baton is passed every evening and then back again every morning because our business is a 24/7 business.
Right.
Where before our phone would ring all hours of the day or night, 7 days a week, today we rarely get a phone call with an issue or problem that we need to resolve because we have such incredible people that take care of things that need to be done.
And how much free time do you guys take a year? Just because I want to also paint the lifestyle picture here. This is not just about making more money.
About 16 weeks.
16 weeks a year that you take off because you have empowered the people, your team members, to actually handle the business and do a fabulous job at it and be invested in it, right?
Our people do so well. One day recently, Tony and I both showed up at the office at the same time, and they were afraid something was wrong. They said, "What's the matter?"
Oh, that's funny.
Because we don't, we have different buffer days and different schedules. We have different things and different talents that we do, and we really focus on our individual unique abilities, which creates the synergy. And so they know they can do their job better if we're not there.
Right.
We're building a business where in the beginning, or when I was by myself, Joe, I was building a job. That was my whole thing, was to build a job. And that was one of the key things when Mary came on and getting involved in Strategic Coach, because as soon as Mary and I got married, it was about a year later that we got involved in Strategic Coach and started building a business with processes and systems. I have to laugh at the things that I used to do, but when you're asking about our team and that, our general manager has been with us for over 20 years. Her husband been with us about 10. When you say family business, there's Mary and I, our general manager and her husband, our night manager, who is a wonderful woman named Sue, and her husband works with us.
We could spend the whole hour just talking about all the relations.
and what I really like, Joe, what this really says is that our general manager and her husband work there, and their 2 sons work there. I mean, it's really a testament, I think, when they believe in what we're doing and how we're doing things, that they not only themselves want to be involved, but that they want their children to come, and they feel like their future is bright by being able to be involved with an organization that's growing and changing people's lives.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of our listeners that would seem like a dream that they would love to have but doesn't really seem obtainable, and I believe that after listening to us as I ask you some questions, they'll see that not only is this possible, but it's closer to reality than you would think if you actually instill some of the things that you guys are currently doing. So that would be my objective here, is just to see how you've created this greatness in your organization and how we can share it with all the listeners so they can put some of that into their own companies and into their own lives.
Great.
Well, so was the biggest shift then when you started working together really just that understanding of where you were financially and it was costing you money, or is there anything else that you'd like to mention before I ask you another question?
That was the biggest shift when we start working together, is to be able to share that. Tony no longer had to carry that burden and try to make everything happen all by himself.
Right. Great.
One day I got home at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's laughing. I mean, I got home from work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had left 6 o'clock the previous morning for work. And
you didn't
he's
even sleep,
laughing.
Huh?
And I'm like, what could you possibly be laughing at? I mean, I just wanted to melt into bed. I was totally exhausted. I had never been up for 25 hours straight in my life. And he said that Christmas had come early to him that year. He finally had somebody else that was willing to share that burden with him.
Oh, my God. Yeah, misery does love company at certain times.
So it seems.
Well, Joe, I thought since I couldn't make any money working alone as hard as I could, that if the 2 of us worked as hard as we could, maybe we could make a little money.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was an entrepreneur when I went to work with Tony, when we decided to work together. I was in a role where I was a commissioned salesperson in the insurance industry, and I was making a really good living. I was a single mom with 3 children and wasn't getting any other support, so I was doing really well. And when we decided to work together, we weren't real sure if Janco was strong enough to support our families and our lifestyle, because we had 5 kids between the 2 of us.
Wow.
So it was a giant, huge leap of faith, because I was actually making more money than what the company was doing at that point.
Yeah,
wow.
But she didn't get to put in as many hours.
It's kind of funny the way the world works. You come together and boom, all of a sudden things happen. Well, here, let me mention this. Dan Sullivan, who's the founder of Strategic Coach, is featuring you in his new book, Industry Transformers. What is it that you're doing or have done that has transformed your industry that would cause Dan, who I consider to be one of the smartest individuals in the world, and I know you guys do too. What is your company doing that has created this industry transformation?
The two biggest pieces is, one, we totally recognize our employees are an asset. You had mentioned earlier about Peter Drucker. I mean, it's in our industry, employees have always just been considered a cost. And that's where we start developing and looking at how can we attract people who want to work in our industry, that they want to work for Jancoa, and how can we help them to look at their lives in a different way.
Yeah, let me interrupt, Mary, real quick and say something, because you mentioned Peter Drucker, and I want to give some context to what I assume you're going to be talking about here. Is before we actually officially started recording, we were chatting a little bit. And in a book, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that's been written about you guys based on your industry transformation abilities, Peter Drucker observed the single greatest error and deception of our accounting system is that people are placed in the liability column on the balance sheet, and that's what you're referring to.
Right. Looking at our people is our product. We're in the service industry. If we take care of our people, I mean, people in manufacturing, they take care of their equipment and that, but nobody takes care of the employees. And so we start really looking at our employees as being an asset and really start figuring out systems to help support them so they can be successful in their life. And then creating the systems and processes for our employees and for cleaning the buildings. Just, everything that Dan has helped us learn through the strategic coach and what I'm helping other entrepreneurs learn as a coach itself, which helps make it even deeper for us learning. It has just totally turned us around and looked at our industry very different. We used to consider ourselves as janitors. Now we look at ourselves as human development.
Say that again. You used to look at yourself as janitors, and now you look at yourself as human development. Elaborate on that a little bit, because I think it's pretty important.
Well, one of the things that we were doing was cleaning, and what we really realized was that people need hope and opportunity. And when they're given the opportunity to have hope for tomorrow, and it wouldn't necessarily be that you get 50 cents or $1 or $2 more, but that you actually have an ability to better yourself, to have a dream for tomorrow, to have something that you are going to progress in your life. And what we found out was sitting down with people and working with them, that if they could get their arms around that tomorrow could be better than today, all of a sudden people were excited and they wanted to come to work. And they started coming to work for their reasons, not our reasons. That they were coming to work to be able to make more money, but they were coming to work to be able to get a home or to get their driver's license or to learn English or to be able to have something that was theirs. And I think that's the big thing here, is that people need to have hope and opportunity for the future.
When did that insight first occur to you guys? You're running this company, you did it for many years. I mean, what happened that became the catalyst for this understanding?
We were fired by a consultant, Joe, because he came in to help us with our systems, and he fired us because he said we couldn't get enough work. We couldn't get the work done because we never had enough people. And he couldn't help us until we figured out how to solve that problem. We were 38 full-time people short. In our industry, if you're cleaning a building that takes 40 hours to clean and you're 10 hours short, man-hours short, you still take 40 hours to clean. So you end up abusing your current people to get the job done. And we would keep hiring 50 people a month or whatever, and Tony would say, oh, no, we need to hire more people. And see, my experience was different. Tony started this business at 19. Basically, he was never really an employee. I was in the corporate world for 20 years or 15 years, and so I knew what it was like to be on that other side of the fence. And I told Tony what we needed to do is to create a company that would attract the people that wanted to work in our industry, that they want to work for Jancoa. And that if once they worked for us, that we would retain them. That if we created an environment, it's one of those things, if you build it, they will come. Field of Dreams had just come out. I was really into this. If we build it, they will come. And Tony's like, what does that mean? What does that look like? How do we do that? So we just wanted to make ourselves a magnet to attract it. And as we start attracting people, we start seeing needs that they had. And one of my favorite things that Tony is such an entrepreneur, we started taking a look. One weekend we stopped at bookstores. We brought home 20 books on hiring and maintaining and creating employee programs and all this stuff. And by Monday morning, we had looked at what our best people looked like, what they had in common, and we figured out one of the biggest problems was transportation. So on Monday morning, Tony arrives at the office with a 15-passenger van that had already been lettered on the side of the van, and tells our general manager, okay, we're going to start picking people up and taking them home because that's our number one problem, so we're going to transport employees. Who's going to drive it? And Dana says, okay, you need a driver. And she looks in her drawer of her desk. She says, sorry, I don't have any drivers. I'm fresh out. So Tony, for the first 2 weeks, drove the van, picking people up from home and taking them to work and going home, getting a few hours sleep, and then going back and taking them back home after work, and start seeing the quality of life, getting to know them. And so that helped create other things. So it's stepping outside of just what your industry is and seeing what are some of the dangers, what are some of the things that is beyond just your product or service.
Yeah, I love the innovation that you guys have, too. Because, I mean, in many ways, since we're both in the cleaning industry in a lot of ways, we have had to look at different ways to think outside of the box,
exactly.
to use that cliche. But really, well, what else do you do for your employees other than you now? I know you provide transportation for the ones that need it and all kinds of stuff, but how would you best summarize for the listeners what it is that you actually do for your employees?
Well, Joe, that's a good question. I think one of the things that the best thing that we do is we meet with them originally, and we have a dream manager that sits down with them, and the first thing they say is tell me about you, where are you at, and where would you like to go? And so as they're talking to them, they're really trying to get to know where that person is. And it's amazing that the first thing they'll tell you is that no one has ever asked me where I want to go in my life, and I've never really thought about it. And when they sit down and they're writing these things and working with it, and they realize that we're there to support them in their future, I think that's the best thing that happens, is we're there for them, and we want them to outgrow us. And I think that they're surprised when we say, hey, the reason that we're here is that we want you to do a great job for 3 to 5 years for us, but you got to outgrow us. This is just a stepping stone for you. This is your beginning, but you have to leave. You have to be able to get yourself ready. And now and then somebody will surprise us, and they'll come back after 3 or 5 years, and they said, you know what, I really don't want to leave. Would it be okay if I just stay here and work with you? And that's okay. But our major thing is that people come there, and we sit down with them as to where they want to go with their life.
Okay, so let me, because you're saying a lot of really good stuff here, and I want to make sure we give it context. You mentioned a dream manager. They sit down with a dream manager, and there's a book that's been written by the best-selling author Matthew Kelly, and your whole business model inspired this book. And I'll ask you about that in a little bit, because he even in the book acknowledges, Tony Miller, you are a genius. And so something actually occurred with this individual who's written this book about, inspired by you guys, that he really saw something that he had never seen before in any other company. So to kind of break this down, you mentioned they sit down with a dream manager. You ask them where do they want to go, which is something that never occurs, and then you actually encourage them to outgrow you because your business is just a stepping stone. Now, a lot of people listening to this will be like, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean by that? So we want people to actually outgrow us and not work for us, and this is only a temporary thing versus, trying to create these corporate handcuffs that will keep people in the business forever, and what you have discovered actually creates a lot of disdain for people. So break this down for me so that people can understand really this philosophy, I would say, that you've developed.
Well, it's so like the caged bird, where if the bird's meant to be here, you set it free, it'll come back type of thing. When you take that power away from it, costs so much to hire somebody, it costs so much to train them, and then you try to hold them captive. And a lot of corporations do this all the time, and a lot of people that you see and you talk to or you hear about are just miserable in their jobs, but they feel like they can't go anywhere because of how much they make or whatever where they're at now, that they can't possibly leave, and they're miserable. We don't want to have a company full of miserable people. We want to have a company full of people that are excited about their future. And it's really cool is we get a large percent of our employees. We don't advertise for positions anymore. I told Tony at one point my dream was to have a waiting list of employees. We have not had an open position that lasted longer than 7 days for several years now.
Wow.
And it's because people bring other people in. There are always going to be people that want to work in our industry, if not forever, for a short period of time. And a lot of our people come from previous employees that have left and have gone on to other things.
Well, let me mention some here, too, for all of our entrepreneurs that are in the cleaning industry, which are, I've got thousands of people that are in the cleaning industry. And obviously one of the biggest challenges for any company is generating business. How do you charge for it? How do you make profits? All that. Now, assuming you have that figured out and under control, which I've taught, a ton of my clients how to develop what I call an ELF business, easy, lucrative, and fun. The number one thing I hear is, how do we get other people? How do we find good people? And part of that process, which is very hard for someone to understand, is you've got to be a company someone would want to go and work for.
Exactly.
And so it's not about finding good people. It's about being a good entrepreneur. It's about
you create yourself to be a magnet to attract what you want to have in your company.
How is that different than what the typical company is? And really, why is it different? Obviously, you sort of alluded to that, but I really want you to go a little deeper with the difference between the way you guys do it and what everyone else does.
Joe, I'd like to take that one. And I'm going to answer it a little differently. When I was 12, I had a secret. And I went into this new school with the secret. And my mom didn't know it. My dad didn't know it. My brother and sister didn't know it. No one knew the secret. And I'm in the back of the classroom, and this teacher comes back, and she's standing around behind me, and she says, "Oh, my God, you can't read." Every eye and every head turned to look at me. I was crushed by the fact that my secret was out, that I couldn't read. But that teacher, her name was Mrs. Robinson. Mrs. Robinson didn't do it to be vicious to me. She was just stunned that I had gotten all the way to the 7th grade and couldn't read. Well, she went and got Mrs. Lumley. And Mrs. Lumley was a tutor. And Mrs. Lumley met me at the front door of her house one day and said, "I know you can learn how to read." And I would say to her, "Mrs. Lumley, I'm just dumb and stupid." And she said, "No, not at all. Do you know how to ride a bike?" I said, "Absolutely. I can go no hands." She said, "Well, let me tell you this. By the end of the summer, you'll be reading." And I went there every day with Mrs. Lumley, and when I didn't believe in myself, she believed in me, Joe. Mrs. Lumley believed in me that I would learn how to read. And that's what Jancoa is about attracting people that wherever they are, it's okay. It doesn't matter. And when they show up there, that they get hope and they get opportunity in their life, and they get a dream manager that sits down with them and says, "It doesn't matter where you're going, but we're going to go there together, and we ought to have a plan." And Strategic Coach taught us about having a plan. And that's one of the things that I think makes us different, and that I believe that your listeners can really grasp onto. There's somebody in their life that's made a difference in their life, and we've taken that into our business. Things that happened early on in our life, as things progressed, what we found out was if we really build this business to be able to be absolutely the best, because I don't believe that people grew up and they said, "You know what I want to do is I want to be a janitor trapped in that job, and I never want to have any opportunity to be able to grow past that."
At one point, Tony was so frustrated when I came along, remember those old cartoons, Joe, where a cartoon character had been shot a bunch of times, but they looked fine when they drank a glass of water, and water would come out of every pore of their body?
Oh, yeah.
I told Tony that's what he reminded me of. For 20 years, he tried to do everything by himself and do anything possible. That he had been shot so many times by exposing himself, there was nothing left. And his frustration and his desire for his future, it just wasn't there anymore. And when we start looking at business in this manner and taking care of people, and he realized that there was a divine plan for him and for us and what we could do in people's lives, we both got so excited about it again. And Tony says now, he says, if you tell me I have to spend the rest of my life figuring out who's going to mop the floors and scrub the toilets, kill me now. But if you tell me I can make a difference in somebody's life, I'm for that. And when we ask employees in orientation about do they want to look at themselves as janitors or making a difference in people's lives, you could just see a total shift in the way they sit in their chairs and everything else. It's just very impressive.
Well, I think that very much does a great job of explaining your philosophy and how you look at it. I mean, your whole mindset towards the way you look at people and the way you look at business is just so completely different than is typical, not just in the cleaning industry, but in all businesses.
True.
What's the biggest results that you feel that you're achieving with how you're doing things?
We've had so many great stories. I mean, we've got couples that bought a home that they're first-generation homeowners, where the husband actually quit smoking just so he could save money to go toward the home and start packing his lunch instead of going fast food, so they could save money for their down payment. But one of my favorite is a couple that met on our transportation shuttle that we had. And they're a Hispanic couple. He's from Mexico, she's from Guatemala. And they met on our shuttle, and they start dating, and then they start working together in a building. They got married. They became supervisors in one of our buildings. They were the first Hispanic couple to buy a home through our homeownership program. Oh, and Freddie got his citizenship shortly after buying a home, so he became a U.S. citizen, and they were one of the first couples that we worked with to help them create their own business. So they left Jancoa, and they own their own business.
Well, okay, now let me back up a little bit. So they met on your transportation vehicle, and you mentioned the homeownership program. Like, what is this? I mean, I'm of course playing devil's advocate here because I know about your homeownership program, but I think it's going to be a shock to the system for a lot of people listening that this is actually taking place in a quote-unquote janitorial company. I mean, we don't see this in any company. You help your employees buy homes because you discovered through your process that one of the biggest dreams that your employees had was to actually own their own home. And they
even felt that was a dream that was too big for them to dream, that was for everybody else, not for them, that their experience and their livelihood was always about renting and moving around every 3 to 6 months. So many of the families that we've helped, and with the programs that we use, we wanted them to be successful homeowners. So we partnered with a program, NeighborWorks, that's a national program, and they have a chapter in Cincinnati, that they had to go to classes to learn about everything it takes to be a successful homeowner. To this point, we have not been informed because none of our employees have lost their homes due to the current housing industry trend, because we got them programs and education to help them become successful homeowners.
Wow. That's amazing. How many homes now have you been able to have?
We've helped with about 20 families purchase homes that had never had a home in their family before.
That is fabulous. Well, what other exciting things have you seen happen from these programs?
People have gotten their GED. They've learned English. People have gotten their driver's license, a car. Some of the things that we just take for granted. We had a young lady that took 3 years to get her driver's license. She was an older person, and she had never thought she could drive. And, setting the time limit herself, and then the day that she got her driver's license was one of the most fantastic times in her life. We have a woman that was saving her pennies to be able to buy a home. And every class that she would come to, she would tell how many pennies that she had saved. And when she was able to get this home by saving it up on her own and working and being able to do it. It was watching her in the process of being able to stand a little taller, being able to go to work early, signing up for overtime. All those things about her personality changed because she was working on where she wanted to go. So it was the process of watching her. It was more exciting almost than watching her get the house, just the way her whole attitude changed about her life.
Wow, amazing. Well, let me back up for a minute, because there are so many byproducts that have come out of this for you. What is the industry norm for turnover? Because I know that was one of the biggest challenges for your business, which is described in a book that I'm going to actually mention after we talk about this. I just want to paint a picture of your business compared to the industry norm. I mean, do you know statistically what the current turnover rate is in the janitorial industry?
It's about 360%.
Okay, 360%, which means what?
For a year, we'd have to hire 3.5 people for that same position.
Okay, good. So now, what is the current turnover in your existing business because of the way you do business now?
About 37% today.
37%. And in the layman's terms, comparing the two, 360% turnover to 40% turnover, what does that look like?
That looks like 3.5 people that you're hiring to do a job would drive you insane, and hiring less than a person every year and a half, it's just an incredible way of doing business.
Okay, so you just mentioned it would drive you insane. So we have a ton of people that are listening to this interview that are in businesses that probably have 100%, 200%, 300%, 400% turnover rates and have no clue on what to do about it or how to do it. And you've actually figured out, not by focusing on profitability of the company or tightening up, expenses or looking at employees as they cost, but you've actually figured out how to have your existing team of people become a self-perpetuating process as a result of doing something as simple, maybe not easy, but as simple as actually caring about what they want in their lives.
Very well said, Joe. Exactly.
One of those things that's really happened to us, Joe, is paying for the programs came from the fact of productivity. In other words, when we had the same people coming to work every day, all of a sudden you start cleaning a little faster because you have familiar people. And people would come to us and say, would it be okay if we have one less person on this job and we could make more money doing it? Now, this was from an employee, Joe, that was there every day, that had a good crew, and he wanted to make sure that his other fellows got paid more money. And so when we had this model, and he was really teaching us that we could be much more productive than what we were doing. And that's one of those things where being able to pay for medical, being able to have vacations, 3 weeks vacation, holiday pay, those type of things for employees was unheard of. And what we found was that nobody really wanted to pay us more. I mean, if they were paying somebody $1, they didn't come up to us and say, hey, I'd like to pay you $3 for the same job because you're giving your people better things. What they really wanted us to be was competitive or lower. And that's one of the things that we found out was that our people were willing to work harder and to do more than someone who didn't have those benefits. And today, Joe, we clean about almost 6,900 square feet an hour, where we have competitors who are cleaning 4,000 square feet an hour. So that's a big deal for us.
What about the quality comparison?
Well, that's the funny part. You would think that because you're going faster, that quality would be less. But what we found out was that a supervisor who could clean 6,900 square feet, 7,000 square feet, he had to be a better supervisor. And the people that he was working with, he had to have the same people there every day, and he had to really have control of the building. So what we found was our quality actually went up by cleaning more productive than cleaning less, because the supervisor really had to understand the building, had to have the same people there every day, and had to make sure that they functioned at the most efficient way.
Wow. Don't you love it, too? So you probably, I imagine, have a lot of naysayers and critics that, for one, they don't understand that, you know, comparing apples to apples, it's really not comparing apples to apples. It's comparing apples to oranges. And in the way you guys do business, you're dealing with a much more, and again, hopefully this won't sound cliche, motivated and inspired workforce than the average company.
Absolutely. And there's definitely people that have told us and that just outright that that's not possible. So
I'm a person, I think anyone that's innovative and creates a better way to do a job has people that have not figured out the better way to do the job or have some sort of agenda that threatens their ability to do the job, that actually can't stand innovators or people that come out with a better way of doing things. So I imagine you've gotten a lot of critics along the way that didn't really understand what you were doing or simply didn't care about their people the way that you care about your people, that have tried to criticize your process and how it's done. I mean, how do you handle or address that, other than the mere fact that evidence in success speaks for itself in many cases?
It has been pretty amazing in our industry because, I mean, our industry is an old industry, and there's the last of just in Cincinnati, we counted 104 cleaning companies in the phone book.
Wow.
So it's a very competitive industry. They're all over the place, and we do it so differently than anybody else. It's like, yeah, well, if that was really true, then everybody would be doing it. So we've tried to lead by example, and when we start seeing our son that works with us in the business, when somebody start going and doing one of the programs, and one of the things we're doing, he says, like, don't you feel like somebody's found our secret well? But it's what we know is the more we do and the more we help and share, the more everybody learns. And there's some consultants out there that they make money by getting people, in coaching and teaching people how they do it.
You have a person that actually sells a software you had told me about last time we were face-to-face in Chicago, about that has a software that says you can only clean X number of square feet per hour because the software says so. Can you tell that story? Because I think it's so instructional.
He's a consultant. Is very successful, has lots of offices, and has helped a lot of companies become better. And his system definitely works. But our system is so different from what his was. He's you know that saying, you can't see the forest through the trees? He's in the middle of the forest, and he sees the trees that he recognizes. And then we came along, and he was retained by a customer of ours to work on the process of going out to bid. And when we presented how we do things, he kind of felt like we were calling him a liar, because we said that our system's better than his, and we can be a lot more productive than his systems were capable of. That he became very agitated by our systems and tried to prove to our customer that we've been doing business with for 12 years that what we said absolutely was not true, that we were liars, and he could prove it. But we had the systems, and the proof is in the pudding. You know, we use electronic timekeeping systems. So our employees, they have to use their handprint and a badge when they go to a building. Nobody can swipe anybody else in. There's a big accountability piece there. So, you know, we really hold our employees to be very accountable and very responsible for what they need to do. So, you know, when they get a lot of great benefits, a lot is asked of them also. But
well, that was one of those situations where he was saying it was 4,200 square feet an hour was the absolute maximum that his software would allow to clean. And we were basically saying, well, I understand that what your software says, and we don't have that software. All we do is clean the building for the customer. And what we have here is that we've been cleaning these buildings at 6,900 square feet. And here's the documentation, and here's the grade card. Every month we get a grade card from our customers on how the cleaning was, and we had months of grade cards and documentation. We said, I don't know about that software, but all I know is here's the building, and here's the square footage, and here's what we're cleaning, and it comes out to 6,900 square feet. And those are kind of the naysayer of, well, you can't do that. And what we focused on, and he said, see, you don't even have the right equipment. And we said, exactly, it's not about the equipment. It's about the people that are operating the equipment that makes all the difference in the world for how fast you clean the building. And so that was kind of a funny thing for us. It was frustrating at the time, but that's one of those deals where we just have to live with it.
Yeah, well, the reason I bring that up is because there are so many people out there that when faced with a better way of doing something can either argue against it or they can work with it. And people that try to argue against truth are like the same sort of people that argue against gravity. You know, the world is flat, it really is flat, and it's, you know, I can't see it any other way. And the reason I love stories like that is I experienced it myself, you know, in working with so many cleaning people. I remember when I first came out with my marketing information back in 1993, this big, supplier said that it's impossible to, clean carpets with one van for $125,000 per truck, because that's what I had built my vehicle up to be back in 1992. And now I have cleaners that do over $500,000 with one service vehicle cleaning, nothing but residential carpet cleaning, not commercial, not water damage, simply just residential cleaning with a very high repeat business. And the paradigm for a lot of people is still, well, that's not possible. But as soon as someone runs a 4-minute mile, you start seeing other people doing it. And I think, and the reason I bring this up is because I want this to be a documented case of the starting point, because I know this interview is going to land into the hands of a lot of people that I think can adopt your process and can absolutely transform and improve. Now, to prove that, what has it done for the clients? I mean, what's your retention level of your existing clients? Because people can say, well, yeah, it works for the employees, it works for you guys, but, are you losing business? Do people stay with you when you're cleaning at this rate?
We don't lose clients, Joe. In the last 3 years, I think we lost 3 clients, and 2 came back within 90 days, and the 3rd would not come back because of a corporate decision for national contract. And we're just in Cincinnati.
Gotcha. So the clients that you have are obviously very happy, and you do a fabulous job for them.
Correct.
And Joe, we don't have a sales force. Our sales force is our customers. Our customers are the ones who get us business, and they'll tell somebody that we're doing their facility and that they ought to have us come and clean theirs. And so we get into situations where they'll call us and say, come on over, take a look at this, and can you help solve this problem for us?
That's great.
The kind of bidding that we're doing.
No, this is so good. Well, let me talk about the book that you mentioned, the term Dream Manager. I mentioned a couple times. The recent book, The Dream Manager, it was written by a guy named Matthew Kelly, and it was inspired by what you do at Jancoa. And so how has this whole process of you transforming the way a janitorial company operates and all the great things you've done for your people and all the programs you set up, how has this actually now turned into a best-selling book?
Well, we've known Matthew for several years. He's quite a remarkable young man, and in the past 15 years he's spoken to over 3 million people. So he's got a lot of experiences, and when he heard about the programs that we are doing with our employees, he told us several times that we ought to write a book. And then a couple of years ago he came to us and said, I've figured it out. Writing a book is not your unique ability. That's mine.
Right.
So we worked out an agreement with him, and a licensing agreement where we licensed the concept to him, and he wrote the book inspired by our story, and that's written as a business parable. And then the second half of the book is how to implement the Dream Manager into your business or into your life. And it's really doesn't matter what industry you're in or what you're doing, even if it's not about where you work. I've had couples the one person's a stay-at-home person taking care of the kids, and it's helped them look at their future differently and go after dreams that they had stopped dreaming.
Right.
So it's been very, very exciting to watch how it's changing people's lives. And we didn't want it to make it about Tony and Mary Miller in Cincinnati and Jan Koa, we wanted it to be made about people seeing that they can have a bigger future than what they have now, that there's no limits.
We have customers that we clean their building, and they use the Dream Manager program at their company.
Wow. That is very impactful. What's actually kind of cool about it, too, what I really like about doing this interview is that people could read the Dream Manager and have no idea that this is like a real company that has done this. And what I think is so neat about this interview is when people read it, it'll give a whole meaning on top of what I think is really a great book. Recently, Tom Peters picked the book up at the airport because I remember you actually showed me when we were in Chicago. Unfortunately, I don't have it right in front of me, but what did Tom Peters have to say about the book? What was it?
It was great. Tom Peters happened to pick it up in San Francisco airport, and he wrote a little thing on his blog. It was back in September, if you want to find it. And he compares the books. He starts talking about his good friend Ken Blanchard and how typically Tom isn't very fond of business parables. But Matthew Kelly has something here. When companies start realizing, when they start helping employees become the better version of themselves, that the company becomes a better version of themselves, it works. It's genius is the word that Tom Peters used. And he actually recently interviewed Matthew and will appear on Tom Peters' website under his Just Friends section.
Oh, that's great. Well, talk about that whole concept of a company becomes better when the employees become better versions of themselves. What does that mean to you guys?
I think, Joe, what it means to me is it starts with Mary and I first, is that we have to be working on how to be the best version of ourselves. What does it really mean to be our best? And if we're not working on being our best, then the people we're working with aren't going to be their best. We've got to do it by leading, by actually doing the things we say we're going to do. You know, there's nothing more exciting than you're working on being a better person, and you have steps and procedures in place that allow you to do it in the most painless way. Now, there's nothing painless about going to the gym, but there's ways to do these things, and being the best version of ourselves is truly, I think that's it starts with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think what the book and what your experience has shown is that is where it starts. I mean, because you did something that I think is completely contrarian to the way most people try to figure out how to make a business work. Mm-hmm. And, it's taken on a life of its own. So, I mean, we've already talked about this, but I want to go deeper with it because this is more than a technique. Oh, here's a technique on how to get your employees really involved. I mean, you've created an experience. So what is the best way that you can summarize the Jan Koa experience in how it's attracting not only the best employees to stay with you, but also you guys have some great customers, too. I mean, what is this experience that's happening?
Tony and I are both pointing at each other at this point.
Oh, no, that's fine. I would expect you to look at each other and say, well, what really, and again, I'm just trying to go deep with getting an understanding into your heads, because this is a philosophy more than anything else.
I think you're right, Joe. I think it's totally a philosophy and a totally different way of looking at business and looking at the relational piece of it and the humanity piece of it. And, so many different things in history is when people support and help each other to be great, greatness just grows.
Oh, and say that again. That is so key.
When people support and help each other be great, greatness grows even more. It's just that humanity piece of the whole thing. Instead of just focusing on the profitability, that comes along with it. Our lifestyle and the quality of our life has definitely gotten better along with the quality of life of our employees. You do the right things for the right reasons.
Well, let's say I was to ask one of your customers, what is it like working with Jan Koa? What do you think they would say?
Well, it's funny you would ask. We had lunch with a customer the other day, and we were talking with him, and I said, what do you think we're about? And the guy's name is Dan Kruger. And Dan said, the first thing I'd like to say is that I just think you have a great company. And I said, well, what does that mean, you have a great company? It's when the people that you send over here, and it doesn't matter who it is, that they're a pleasure to work with. They just seem to get what we want. So what I think is that you're a great company. And then the second thing, I think, is that you do great work. I mean, your employees understand what they're supposed to do, so they do a great job. And the third thing that I think about you is you're great to work with. In other words, if there's something screwed up, you're great to work with. And we've been in business a long time, and I'd like to say to you that no one has ever thought that when something was missing in their office that it wasn't us. But most of the time, if there's a problem, we're the first person that people look at.
You know, the janitor always does it, right, Joe?
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things that happened was they were missing some laptops, and they called, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and they had some laptops missing, and I drove over there, and I got there about 10 to 10, and I said, well, how much do we owe you? And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, when you left here at 5 o'clock last night, were the laptops here? Yeah. When you came in at 8 o'clock this morning, were they here? No. Well, we were the only people that were here from 5 o'clock last night till 8 o'clock in the morning. And they said, well, there might have been some other people. Well, I said, you know what? Until you know it wasn't us, we'd like to write you a check. And so we wrote a check, and it was like $17,552.
Wow.
And the point being is that we wanted them to know that we took their security in their building seriously. And about 4 months afterwards, I got the check back in the mail. And they said, hey, we did further investigation on the thing and found out that the laptops turned up and people had taken them home.
Oh, God. Unbelievable.
But they knew we were serious about taking care of the problem for them, and they were serious enough to really to find out about it. And we, in our industry, a lot of times that doesn't happen, Joe. It doesn't happen where you're just taking it at face value. When that customer says, I got a problem, we're saying, how do we fix it?